Hello, I'm Don McMahon, and I'm an assistant professor at Washington State University. And today I'm in the Assistive Technology Research and Development Lab, and we're going to look at some built-in accessibility features on your iPads. So there are over 1 million apps out there on the Apple iPad store, but the absolute coolest app from my point of view is built right into your device for everybody. It's called Settings. And we are going to check out what's available for accessibility features right from the beginning here in our Settings app. So first here, if you can see what I'm seeing here on the screen, this is what we see with Settings. There are all of these options here along the left-hand side. And if you select General here, like I have, and you've got lots of options, but look for Accessibility. And that is where we are going to be able to do some really great things for our students. So first off, our selection of accessibility features are some vision related ones. Our first one is called VoiceOver. And you turn on VoiceOver.
VoiceOver on. Settings. Lens. Alert. Cancel. VoiceOver off.
As you may have noticed, it immediately starts talking and reading and explaining what's happening on the screen. VoiceOver is designed for people with some fairly significant vision impairments or who are completely blind. And what I found for many people who have vision impairments, they can get used to listening to text at a much higher rate than I can listen to it and process it. So I'm going to move my little slider for the speaking rate more towards Mr. Turtle than Mr. Rabbit because I can't pay attention that fast. But some other important things for you to be aware of, let's say you're working with a student who uses Braille, a lot of new Braille readers will actually have a Bluetooth connection or be able to connect directly to an iPad. So be aware that your mobile devices can interact with Braille devices, which is a really amazing commitment to accessibility features. There's also something here called Rotor, which has a whole selection of additional little movements rather than just touching and selecting things. You can do twisting and selecting movements like this, which can be very helpful for learners or people with vision impairments. But that's a little bit more complicated than we're going to go into for this, but just be aware that that's out there. Let's go back to our list of accessibility features. There's also zoom. We can zoom into text and make it a little bit larger. We can invert colors and make, instead of black text on white, we can make it white text on a black background, which has been shown to be easier for some readers. We can make everything grayscale as well. But my favorite accessibility feature is called Speak Selection. And instead of reading the entire screen, it is just about reading selected words or paragraphs that you select, whether it's an individual word or it can be, a whole section of text. Just like VoiceOver, we can choose how fast or slow this goes. Again, I can only take in so much information, so I'm going to keep mine pretty slow. But I really encourage you to select this option right below speaking rate called Highlight Content. And whenever possible, it will highlight the words individually as they're being read. We know from lots of previous reading research out there that highlighting words as they're being read aloud in text-to-speech can be a really powerful comprehension strategy to help struggling readers. So that's built in, not a couple of $100 piece of software. This is just a built-in feature on your iPad. So let's see what that looks like. I'm going to go over to a web page, and I'm just going to select some text here. It's the Olympics right now, and apparently a lot of people think this one Olympian looks like Leonardo DiCaprio. I don't think he does. But so that's what that sounds like. And another great way to use this is, let's say you had a student who had a read aloud testing accommodation. Read aloud testing is one of our most common testing accommodations. So you could take your, let's say, 8th grade test or 5th grade science test and put it in iBooks and have your students select anything that they wanted to hear. And now it's reading the words and highlighting each word as it's being read aloud. But it could also do each individual question on, let's say, your test for you. And so instead of you reading your test aloud to a group of 8 students who have read aloud testing accommodations, you could read just or they could listen to question 2 as many times as they needed to process question 2, while maybe another student is able to go ahead and move on to question 3 and take the test at their own pace. Or they could do something like an advanced test taking strategy by going and skipping a question that's really hard and moving on to something that's a little bit easier. And we teach that strategy to other students, but for our students with read aloud testing accommodations, they don't get that opportunity as often because we generally do read aloud testing in a group of 3 to 8 students, and everyone kind of goes along takes the test at the same pace as the teacher reading it. It also doesn't give them much time to just listen to a question and have some uninterrupted time to kind of process it and work through the question. So I'm a big fan for read aloud testing accommodations of using text to speech and allowing students to move at their own pace. One of the first things that people frequently are concerned about, though, with this idea is how do I make sure that my students stay on the test that I want them to hear and not go off and go play Angry Birds or go off on the internet. And so the last accessibility feature that I want to highlight right now is called guided access. So I just scroll down through the accessibility features. It's kind of here at the bottom, guided access. And I have mine turned on. You set a little passcode. My passcode is 1234. You will need to pick something harder because your students will figure out 1234. But for me right now, it's working pretty well. At least I can remember it. But I can go over to pretty much any app that's on my iPad. I'm going to go back to iBooks, and I'm going to press the home button really quickly 3 times. And guided access has started. And if I want to turn it off, I just put in my passcode, and that's what it looks like. I can choose to turn on or off certain parts of the screen. So let's say if there was a menu up here at the top that I didn't want my students to have access to, or settings or something, I can actually gray out part of the screen and prevent my students from getting to a different app. This comes in handy for many special education teachers who are working with students with complex communication needs. So this is an app called Verbally. And I might want my student to, let's say for a certain period of time in class, only be using their device as a communication tool. I press the home button 3 times to turn on guided access. And now guided access has started. If I need to turn it off, I can do that passcode. And let's say in this case, I didn't want my student to be able to use the settings app, the settings here. So I'm going to draw a little gray box around settings. And as you can see, it's kind of grayed out here. And now my student can't go to anything. They can't change the settings on this, and they can't go to anything else. If I go try to play Angry Birds, I get a message, guided access is now started, and I have to put in the passcode to go to anything else. But you can use guided access in your classroom. Let's say you're doing a station teaching lesson and you want to make sure that when your students rotate to that table at the back of the room to use the iPads to do a certain math app, that they don't go play Angry Birds or Pokemon Go or anything else. That way, if you have guided access on, you can be sure that they're exactly where they need to be, which is one less thing that you have to worry about as a teacher or a parent. So that's how we can use some of these accessibility features that are built into our device. There are some other ones for hearing and closed captioning and other ones that you can also check out, and some accessibility features for assistive touch. There's also switch support. So if you have a student with limited mobility or fine motor, they can use a switch to select certain things as well. So just be aware of that. And that's here in interaction control. There's more here in the settings than I could ever possibly get to in a short amount of time. So thanks for watching, but these are some of the ones I like a lot to help teachers out in their classrooms. And stay tuned for some of our other videos from the Assistive Technology Research and Development Lab here at WSU. We're going to look at ways that we can use restrictions to turn on or off certain parts of the iPad, because sometimes that can be helpful. You know, what could possibly go wrong by giving lots of middle school students mobile devices that have cameras on them, for instance? So maybe there'll be some situations where you need to adjust which things they have access to. So we're also going to look at restrictions here soon. All right, thank you for joining us.